The forbidden artifact. The ruins stretched across the dead planet like the skeleton of an ancient beast. Cracked stone pillars, broken statues, and faded carvings covered in dust told the story of a long-forgotten civilization. Somewhere inside these ruins lay the Spear of Legends, a weapon of unimaginable power, locked away for thousands of years. Many had come searching for it. The strongest warriors, the smartest scientists, the most advanced alien empires. They had all tried, and they had all failed. The spear was protected by a barrier, a force field so strong that even starship cannons could not break it. And yet today, a human stood before it. Captain Elias Carter looked at the glowing barrier with a mix of curiosity and determination. He wasn't the tallest, nor the strongest, and certainly not the most advanced. Compared to the great empires of the galaxy, humans were young and inexperienced. But Elias had something the others did not. Behind him, a crowd of alien explorers, mercenaries, and scientists watched in amusement. Some laughed, some whispered. Another fool trying to claim the spear. A human. This should be entertaining. He'll fail like the rest. Elias ignored them. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. The barrier hummed softly, glowing with golden energy. The last recorded attempt to break it had been made by the warlords of Karathvar, a reptilian species with brute strength. They had used plasma drills, antimatter charges, and gravity disruptors. None of it worked. But Elias wasn't here to break the barrier. He reached out and placed his hand against the shimmering surface. The energy tingled against his skin, like a living thing testing him, judging him. Then something impossible happened. The barrier flickered. Gasps filled the ruins. The crowd took a step back. Some aliens instinctively reached for their weapons, unsure of what they had just witnessed. The energy field, which had stood unbroken for thousands of years, began to crack like glass. Light spilled from the fractures, and then, in one final flash, it shattered. The Spear of Legends, floating in the air beyond the barrier, was now free. A deep silence filled the ruins. For a moment, Elias didn't move. He could feel the weight of every gaze on him. His fingers trembled slightly as he stepped forward and wrapped his hand around the spear's shaft. It was surprisingly light, yet he could feel a strange power pulsing inside it, like a heartbeat. And then, a low, rumbling sound echoed through the ruins. The ground trembled. Dust and small rocks fell from the ancient ceiling. The air turned heavy, charged with an unknown force. A voice, deep, ancient, and otherworldly, filled the ruins. The worthy one has come. But can he survive? Suddenly, the ruins came alive. Massive stone statues that had been standing still for eons began to move. Their eyes glowed red, and cracks formed in their bodies as they awakened from their slumber. These were not ordinary statues. They were guardians, ancient war machines programmed to destroy any who dared to take the spear. The first guardian stepped forward, its stone fists cracking the ground with each movement. It was the size of a small building, its arms thick as tree trunks. Its hollow eyes locked onto Elias. Then it attacked. A fist came crashing down, aiming to smash him into dust. Elias rolled to the side, barely dodging in time. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground, knocking some aliens off their feet. The crowd screamed and scattered, realizing the danger too late. Another guardian activated, then another. Soon, the ruins were filled with the thunderous sound of moving stone. Elias gripped the spear tightly, his heart pounding. He had no idea how to use it. He had no idea why the barrier had chosen him. But he knew one thing. He had to fight. The barrier breaks. A hush fell over the ruins. The golden dust of the shattered barrier still hung in the air, glittering like fireflies caught in slow motion. The ancient force field that had stood unbroken for thousands of years was gone. And in the center of it all stood Elias Carter, a human, one of the youngest species in the galaxy, holding the Spear of Legends in his hands. The artifact pulsed gently, as if alive. It wasn't just a weapon. It was something more. But the crowd of alien explorers, mercenaries, and scholars standing behind him didn't care about that. They only saw the impossible. The human. He did it. No, that's not possible. We must take it from him. A murmur turned into a roar as aliens surged forward, greed and fear flashing in their eyes. The barrier was never supposed to break. The spear was never meant to leave its resting place. Yet here it was, resting in the hands of an insignificant human. Elias took a step back, gripping the spear tightly. He didn't know why the barrier had let him through. He didn't understand why the artifact felt so familiar in his hands. But he knew one thing. He was in danger. Then the ruins shook. A sound, deep and ancient, rumbled through the air like a mountain groaning in pain. The crowd froze. The stone floor beneath their feet cracked, and a powerful energy wave surged outward from the pedestal where the spear had rested for millennia. Elias felt it pass through him, a force that didn't harm, but instead whispered to him in a language he didn't know, yet somehow understood. And then came the voice. The worthy one has come. It was deep, echoing, old beyond time. It wasn't a single voice, but many speaking as one. It filled the air, vibrating through the bones of every living thing in the ruins. Aliens fell to their knees, their bodies overcome with an overwhelming sense of insignificance. The voice spoke not just to their ears, but to something deeper, as if their very existence was being judged. Elias clenched his jaw, trying to keep his breathing steady. The voice spoke again. But can he survive? The ruins roared to life. From the depths of the ancient stone walls, massive figures began to stir. Statues, long thought to be mere decoration, shifted. Eyes of dull rock blazed with fiery energy. Stone limbs, heavy as mountains, cracked and groaned as they moved for the first time in ages. The guardians had awakened. The first one, standing 3 times the height of a human, turned its head toward Elias. Its face was blank stone, but its eyes burned like twin stars. Its massive arms, thicker than tree trunks, clenched into fists. And then it attacked. Elias barely had time to react. The guardian swung its arm like a battering ram, aiming to crush him in a single blow. Instinct took over. He jumped back, just as the guardian's fist smashed into the ground where he had stood. The impact shattered the stone floor, sending cracks racing outward like lightning. Dust and debris exploded into the air. The alien crowd panicked. Some fled, others drew their weapons. Though deep down, they knew nothing in their arsenal could stand against these ancient titans. Another guardian moved, its heavy footsteps sending tremors through the ruins. More statues awoke, stepping down from their perches, eyes locked onto the human who had taken the spear. There was no doubt now. This was a test. Elias tightened his grip on the spear. The ancient whispers still echoed in his mind. The weapon felt warm in his hands, the pulsing energy inside it growing stronger. For a brief moment, he hesitated. How do I use this? There was no button, no trigger, no instruction manual. But deep inside, he could feel it. The spear wanted to be used. It wasn't just an object. It was a key, and Elias had unlocked something greater than himself. The second guardian charged. Its massive stone foot stomped toward him, fast despite its size. Elias had seconds to react. He didn't think. He acted. Raising the spear, he let his instincts guide him. A surge of golden light erupted from the tip, arcing through the air like a lightning bolt. It struck the advancing guardian square in the chest. The result was instantaneous. A powerful shockwave blasted outward. The guardian's entire chest caved inward, cracks spiderwebbing across its entire body. The glow in its eyes flickered, then died. With a deafening boom, the massive stone warrior collapsed, its body shattering into rubble. Silence. The remaining guardians stopped. They did not charge. They did not attack. Instead, they simply watched. Elias stood over the fallen statue, breathing hard, the spear still pulsing with energy in his hands. Then, one by one, the guardians knelt. It was not defeat. It was recognition. Elias wasn't sure what had just happened, but he knew one thing. He had passed the test. The ruins fell silent again, but the whispers in his mind did not fade. They grew stronger, showing him flashes of distant stars, ancient battles, and a dark force stirring beyond the edge of the galaxy. Elias swallowed. He had freed the spear, but what had he just awakened? The trial of legends. A heavy silence hung over the ruins. The massive guardians, once feared as unstoppable enforcers of the ancient world, now knelt before Elias Carter. Their burning eyes dimmed, their towering forms motionless as if waiting. Elias tightened his grip on the spear of legends, his breath uneven. The energy pulsing through the artifact was like a living thing, ancient, powerful, aware. He felt its presence deep in his mind, whispering in a language beyond words. But the silence did not last long. The crowd of aliens, explorers, mercenaries, scholars, who had witnessed the impossible now broke into chaos. "This is madness," a reptilian warlord growled, his scaled fists clenching in frustration. "That spear belongs to no one. It should not have been touched." "The Guardians have chosen him," a hooded scholar whispered, eyes wide with fear and awe. "The prophecy speaks of this, a mortal wielding the power of the ancients." Some aliens stepped forward, their weapons raised, not in defense, but in desperation. Their greed outweighed their caution. "Human," one of them sneered, a pale-skinned being with glowing blue eyes. "You have no idea what you're holding. Hand over the spear, and perhaps we will let you live." Elias exhaled slowly. He had expected this. Power draws enemies like fire draws moths. But before he could respond, the ruins trembled again. A deep guttural howl rose from beneath the ground, ancient and monstrous. It was followed by a second, then a third. The temperature dropped. The air became heavy, filled with an unseen force that squeezed the lungs of every living being in the ruins. The guardians, still kneeling, suddenly turned their heads toward the far end of the chamber. And then the wall collapsed. From the darkness beyond, they came. The awakening of the Forsaken. At first, they looked like shadows moving unnaturally, twisting and writhing as they slithered forward. Then the dust cleared, revealing their true forms. Creatures, tall, gaunt, skeletal beings, their bodies made of charred black stone, their veins glowing with an eerie green energy. Their faces were featureless, except for two hollow voids where eyes should have been. They moved with unnatural fluidity, their limbs stretching and shifting like liquid stone. The Forsaken had awakened. They had been sealed away for thousands of years, trapped behind layers of time and forgotten by history. But when the Spear of Legends was freed, so were they. And now, they had one purpose: destroy the one who broke the seal. A terrible screech echoed through the ruins as the first Forsaken lunged. Elias barely had time to react. He swung the spear, and as if sensing the attack, the weapon unleashed a pulse of golden energy. The Forsaken was blown backward, its body cracking apart into black shards before disintegrating into mist. But more were coming. Dozens, hundreds, crawling from the shadows, from cracks in the ruins, from the darkness beneath the world. And they were hungry. The battle for survival. Screams erupted as the alien crowd scattered. Some ran for the exits, while others fought back, firing plasma rifles and energy weapons. But their attacks were useless. The Forsaken twisted and dodged, their bodies reforming the instant they were struck. Elias had no choice. He ran. Darting through the collapsing ruins, he felt the spear guiding him, pulling him toward something. The whispers in his head grew louder, forming broken fragments of words. The trial, the gateway, the reckoning, the key. He didn't understand, but he didn't need to. The spear had awakened something terrible, and only it could end it. As he ran, one of the Forsaken appeared in front of him, rising from the ground like smoke. It struck with clawed hands, faster than any creature Elias had ever seen. He dodged, barely. The claws grazed his shoulder, and immediate pain seared through his entire body. His vision blurred. His veins felt like they were burning from the inside. Poison. Not physical. Something worse. A corruption. Elias gritted his teeth. No, not like this. With a defiant roar, he drove the spear forward, piercing the Forsaken through its hollow chest. The moment the tip of the weapon touched the creature, it screamed. A sound so unnatural that even the Guardians shuddered. Then, a flash of golden fire. The Forsaken vanished. Elias stumbled back, gasping for breath. His arm still burned, but the pain was fading. The spear had purged the poison. That was when he realized. This was the trial. The Forsaken had not been released by accident. They were the final test. The ancients had locked them away for a reason. They could not be fought with normal weapons. Only the spear could kill them. And now, Elias was the only one who could stop them. The final choice. The Guardians still knelt, watching him. The aliens who had once mocked him were now either dead or fleeing. The Forsaken were everywhere. And Elias. He was standing alone, the spear of legends glowing in his hands, the whispers in his mind growing louder, calling him toward something deeper in the ruins. He had a choice. He could run, escape, try to survive, or he could follow the path the spear was showing him. Face the darkness, finish what he had started. Elias gripped the spear tightly. There was no choice. He turned toward the unknown, toward the heart of the ruins, toward his destiny. And he walked forward. The betrayal. The ruins were drowning in shadows. Elias Carter moved through the wreckage, his breath ragged, the spear of legends pulsing in his grip. Behind him, the echoes of battle faded into eerie silence. The Forsaken were still hunting, their unnatural whispers slithering through the air like unseen serpents. But Elias wasn't running anymore. He was following the pull, a force deep inside the spear, something guiding him toward a greater purpose. He didn't understand it. He didn't question it. All he knew was that the weapon in his hands was alive in some way, and it was leading him toward something important. He pressed on, deeper into the ruins, where time itself seemed to stand still. The air was thick, charged with ancient power. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls, shifting as he passed, as if whispering their own secrets. He wasn't alone. Footsteps behind him. Elias stopped. His grip on the spear tightened. He wasn't the only survivor. A familiar voice spoke from the darkness. Elias. Slowly he turned. Commander Vex. The reptilian warrior stood just a few feet away, his scaled armor dull under the dim light. His golden, slit-pupil eyes studied Elias with something unreadable, not quite hostility, not quite fear. Behind Vex, other figures emerged. Elias's own crew, the ones he had trusted, the ones who had followed him into the unknown. And now, they had their weapons drawn. Elias exhaled sharply. He knew what this was, the weight of power. "Drop the spear, Elias," Vex said. His voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the steel underneath. Elias's fingers tightened around the weapon. Is this really happening? "You don't understand what you're holding," Vex continued. "None of us do. But every empire, every civilization in this galaxy has spent thousands of years trying to claim that thing. And now you expect them to just let a human keep it." Elias let out a dry, humorless laugh. "I didn't ask for this. But you have it. And that makes you a threat." Vex took a slow step forward. The others followed. They weren't attacking yet, but Elias could see it in their eyes. They were waiting for the right moment. "The Galactic Council won't allow this," another voice added. Tessafero, Elias's second-in-command, a woman he had fought beside for years. "The warlords, the syndicates, the High Dominion, They'll all come for you, Elias. We can't protect you from that. You're not here to protect me, Elias muttered. You're here to take it. Silence. Tessa's gaze flickered, but Vex remained still. We don't want to do this, Vex said, almost gently. But we will, if we have to. Elias looked at them, his crew, his friends, the people he had fought beside, survived with. The same people who were now pointing their weapons at him. It didn't even surprise him. Power changed things. People could justify anything if they convinced themselves it was for the greater good. He should have seen this coming. The choice. A long pause stretched between them. Then Elias did something they didn't expect. He lowered the spear. Vex hesitated. So did Tessa. A few others exchanged uncertain glances. Elias studied them carefully. He had no intention of handing over the spear, but he needed them to believe he was surrendering, just for a moment. Because that moment was all he needed. Then he moved. Faster than they thought possible, Elias swung the spear in an arc, its golden light cutting through the air. A shockwave erupted, knocking half the crew off their feet before they could even react. Vex stumbled back, cursing in his native tongue. Tessa shouted, "Elias, stop!" But he was already moving. He ran. Blaster fire erupted behind him, blue streaks of plasma lighting up the ruins. He twisted, dodging behind a broken stone pillar as the shots missed him by inches. Sparks exploded against ancient walls, sending debris into the air. Elias didn't stop. His body moved on instinct, driven by something older than fear, older than hesitation. The spear burned in his hands, its whispers growing louder, its energy flooding his limbs. He reached the edge of the ruins. A massive gap in the stone floor, leading into a chasm so deep he couldn't see the bottom. He skidded to a stop. Behind him, his crew closed in, weapons raised. Vex wiped blood from his lip, his expression unreadable. "Don't do this, Elias." Elias glanced at the chasm, then back at his former crew. Then he smiled. And he jumped. The fall into darkness. Wind howled in his ears as he fell. The ruins disappeared above him, swallowed by the abyss. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, light. The spear reacted. Golden energy flared around him, slowing his descent. Symbols carved into the stone walls of the abyss began to glow, as if responding to his presence. And then, he landed, not on stone, not on solid ground, but on something else. A massive structure lay hidden deep beneath the ruins. An underground temple, untouched by time. Its walls shimmered with a strange, shifting energy, something beyond technology, beyond magic. And in the center of it all, waiting for him, a gate, tall, black as the void, pulsing with power. And beyond that gate, something watching, something waiting. Elias took a shaky breath, the whispers in his mind now clearer than ever. He had escaped betrayal. He had survived the Forsaken. But this was only the beginning. The ancient threat returns. The air was thick with silence. Elias Carter stood at the edge of a vast underground chamber, his grip on the spear of legends tightening. The only source of light came from a massive gate, standing impossibly tall before him. It was carved from obsidian black stone, yet veins of shifting golden energy pulsed across its surface, twisting and writhing like something alive. Something waited beyond. Something that had been sealed away for a very long time. The whispers in Elias's mind had become a constant hum, words in a language he still couldn't fully understand, but he could feel their meaning. This was what the spear had been leading him to. He took a slow step forward, scanning the chamber. It was ancient, far older than the ruins above. Strange symbols flickered on the walls, shifting as if reacting to his presence. The floor was smooth stone, worn down by time itself. Elias exhaled. He had escaped his crew's betrayal, survived the Forsaken, and now he stood at the threshold of something far bigger. Something watching him. Then, a sound. A deep guttural rumbling filled the chamber, vibrating through the stone like the breath of a sleeping giant. Elias froze. A wave of cold washed over him, and for the first time, the whispers in his head stopped. The spear dimmed, and then, the gate began to open. The awakening. A low grinding noise echoed as the gate slowly parted, revealing an abyss darker than space itself. A wind rushed past Elias, but it wasn't natural. It carried a presence with it, something old, something wrong. And then, it stepped forward. A shape emerged from the darkness beyond the gate. At first it was just a silhouette, towering, unnatural, inhuman. Then the light from the chamber touched it, and Elias's breath caught in his throat. The being was massive, at least 4 times his height, its body covered in shifting black armor that seemed to be made of living shadows. Its form was humanoid, but wrong. Its limbs too long, its movements too smooth, like liquid given shape. Where its face should have been, there was only a void, a swirling abyss of darkness. And then it spoke. Its voice was not a sound. It was a presence, a whisper that did not touch the ears, but the soul. Mortal. Elias flinched. The single word weighed down on him, pressing into his bones, his mind, his very existence. It was not a greeting. It was an acknowledgement. It knew him, and it was waiting. The first strike. Elias's pulse pounded in his ears. The spear in his hands felt suddenly small, weak. But he had come too far to stop now. He raised the spear. The golden energy within it flared to life, pushing back against the unnatural darkness seeping from the entity. Sparks of ancient power crackled in the air, and for a brief moment, the whispers in his mind returned, stronger than before. The last guardian. The first betrayer. The one who devours. Elias didn't understand the full meaning, but he understood one thing. This thing was not just a threat. It was the reason the spear had been created. It had been sealed away for a reason, and now it was free. The entity took another step forward. The chamber shook. The walls cracked. And then it moved, faster than anything its size should have been able to. Elias barely had time to react before a black tendril lashed out, faster than a whip. He dove to the side, rolling across the stone floor as the tendril struck the ground where he had stood. The impact sent a shockwave through the chamber, shattering ancient stone into dust. Elias didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, swinging the spear in a downward arc. The tip of the weapon met the entity's form and connected. For a fraction of a second, time seemed to pause. Then, an explosion of golden light. The entity reeled back, its entire body vibrating as cracks of white-hot energy spread across its chest. A sound, not quite a scream, not quite a roar, rippled through the air. Something so alien that Elias's vision blurred. But it wasn't enough. The cracks in the creature's form sealed instantly. The shadows around it twisted, reforming, adapting. Elias barely had time to register what had happened before the next strike came. This time, he wasn't fast enough. The tendril slammed into him, hitting him like a freight train. He was thrown across the chamber, crashing into a stone pillar. Pain exploded in his ribs, and for a moment, his vision flashed white. The spear slipped from his grasp. His head spun. His body refused to move. And the entity kept coming. The choice to stand. Elias forced his eyes open, breathing hard. The entity towered over him, its featureless void face inches away. And then it spoke again. "You are unworthy." The words weren't spoken in arrogance. There was no anger, no hate, just cold certainty. Elias coughed, tasting blood. His body screamed at him to stay down, to give up. But then, he heard them. The whispers. Not the entity's voice. Not the whispers of the Forsaken. The spear's voice. It was faint, distant, but it was calling him. Elias gritted his teeth. No, not like this. His fingers dug into the stone floor. His muscles burned as he forced himself to move. One arm, then the other, and then he stood. Slow, unsteady, but he stood. The entity stopped. For the first time, it hesitated. Elias reached out. The spear, lying on the ground a few feet away, suddenly flared to life. And then it moved, flew into his hand. The moment his fingers closed around it, a shockwave of golden fire erupted from the weapon, blasting outward in all directions. The entity staggered back, its form distorting, its shadows retreating from the light. The whispers in Elias's mind roared. The spear was no longer just an ancient weapon. It was a key, and Elias was the one who would use it. He raised the spear, his entire body burning with power. The energy surged through him, stronger than ever before. And then, with everything he had, he charged. The last stand. A storm of golden fire and black void clashed in the heart of the ancient chamber. Elias Carter charged forward, the spear of legends burning in his hands, its power pulsing like the heartbeat of a dying star. Before him, the entity of shadows, the ancient terror that had been sealed away for millennia, stood unmoving, watching. Then it raised a hand. A tendril of pure darkness lashed out, twisting through the air like a living blade. Elias barely had time to react. He rolled to the side, feeling the tendril slice through the stone where he had stood, cutting it like paper. He didn't stop. He couldn't. His boots pounded against the ancient floor as he surged forward, gripping the spear tighter, raising it high. The moment the weapon's tip aimed at the entity's chest, Elias thrust forward. A shockwave of golden energy erupted from the spear, colliding with the being. The entire chamber shook as an explosion of light, and shadow tore through reality itself. The entity screamed, a sound that was not sound, a ripple through existence. The walls of the chamber cracked, symbols carved by hands long dead flaring to life in a desperate attempt to contain the destruction. Elias stumbled back, gasping for breath. The spear's power was immense, but so was the entity's resistance. Then it spoke. Not in words, not in whispers. It spoke directly into his soul. You are not the first. Elias's vision flashed. Suddenly, he wasn't in the chamber anymore. Visions of the past. A battlefield. 1,000 warriors, wielding golden weapons like the spear, standing against the entity and its army of Forsaken. But they were losing. Elias saw a great leader, one whose armor shone like a dying sun, step forward. This warrior was the last of his kind. He raised his own spear, chanting words Elias couldn't understand. Then, a final sacrifice. A great explosion of golden fire, sealing the entity away, locking it behind the gate Elias had opened. The warriors were gone. The battle was over. But the war had only been delayed. And now, Elias had undone their sacrifice. The vision faded. Elias gasped, feeling himself collapse to one knee. The entity loomed over him, silent and patient. It had seen his doubt. It had seen his fear. And it was waiting for him to break. No, not like this. Elias gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand. The spear in his hands burned brighter, as if responding to his resolve. I don't care how many came before me, Elias muttered, voice shaking but firm. I'm here now, and I'm ending this. The battle beyond time. The entity moved, faster than a shadow, darker than the void itself. Elias barely had time to react before tendrils of black energy wrapped around him, lifting him off the ground. He struggled, trying to twist free, but the shadows tightened like chains. The spear flared, sending out bursts of golden fire, but the entity absorbed them effortlessly. Then, pain. A pulse of pure darkness ripped through Elias's body. It wasn't physical. It was worse. It was erasing him. His memories flickered. His name wavered. His very existence began to come undone. Elias screamed. The spear dimmed. His vision blurred. He felt himself fading. The entity was consuming him, swallowing him into the void piece by piece. And then, a voice. Not from the entity, not from the spear, from inside Elias himself, the human factor. You are not alone. His mind filled with faces, his crew, his friends, the people who had stood beside him. Commander Vex, his reptilian comrade, the first to challenge and respect him. Tessafaro, his second in command, who had once believed in him before betrayal divided them. His people, humanity, the youngest race in the stars, stubborn and reckless, but never willing to kneel. Elias felt something ignite inside him. The entity had faced warriors, it had fought legends, but it had never fought a human before, and it had never fought him. Elias roared. Golden fire exploded from within, surging outward in a storm of raw power. The tendrils of darkness snapped like brittle glass. The entity recoiled. For the first time, it hesitated. Elias didn't waste the moment. The spear's energy burned through him, not just as a weapon, but as something more. Not just a key, not just a tool, a force of will. The final strike. Elias launched himself forward, moving faster than he ever had before. The spear became an extension of himself, an unstoppable comet of golden energy. The entity lashed out, but this time, Elias was ready. He twisted midair, dodging the incoming strike, and with everything he had left, he drove the spear forward, straight into the entity's chest. For a moment, silence. Then, a shockwave. A blinding explosion of pure energy erupted, consuming the chamber in light and shadow, ripping through time itself. The walls crumbled, reality itself shook, and then, the entity screamed. A sound of defeat, of rage, of finality. Its form began to crack, the shadows peeling away, the void collapsing in on itself. The gate behind it flared to life, pulling the entity back into the abyss. It fought. It resisted. But Elias had made his choice. He pushed harder. The entity's form broke apart, unraveling into streams of darkness, spiraling back into the gate. The ancient seal reformed, golden symbols blazing across its surface, locking the entity away, this time, forever. Then, silence. The battle was over. The price of victory. Elias fell to his knees, his body exhausted, broken. The spear dimmed, its energy spent. He had won. But something inside him knew this wasn't the end. The spear still pulsed faintly, as if whispering, warning. Out there, beyond the stars, beyond the known galaxy, there were more. More gates, more forgotten threats. And now, they knew he existed. Elias exhaled, staring up at the fading glow of the gate. The war was over, but the real fight had just begun. The price of power. The battlefield was silent. Elias Carter knelt in the center of the ruins, the spear of legends resting in his trembling hands. The golden glow that had once burned like a star was now faint, flickering like the last ember of a dying fire. Around him, the stone chamber lay in ruins. Walls shattered, the ground fractured, the very air heavy with the echoes of something ancient and terrible. The entity of shadows was gone, sealed away. Trapped behind the rebuilt gate, its presence now nothing more than a distant whisper. But Elias could still feel it, lurking at the edge of reality. Watching, waiting. And he knew it would never forget his name. The cost of victory. He took a slow, ragged breath, forcing himself to move. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest. His ribs ached where the entity's tendrils had struck him. His vision blurred from exhaustion. He had won. But what had it cost him? The ruins above were likely collapsed. His crew, or what was left of them, had either fled or were still searching for him. The Galactic Council, the warlords, the empires, they would all come for him now. No one would believe what had truly happened here. They wouldn't care that he had saved them from a forgotten horror. All they would see was a human holding the most powerful artifact in existence. And they would want it. Elias exhaled sharply. He needed to move. But then, he felt it. A presence. Not the entity, not the Forsaken. Something else. The specter of the past. Slowly, Elias turned. And he saw him. A figure stood at the far end of the chamber, shrouded in golden light. He was tall, armored in something ancient, his stance strong yet weary. His face was mostly hidden beneath a worn hood, but Elias could see his eyes. Deep, endless, carrying the weight of time itself. It wasn't a living being. It was a memory given form. A ghost from a war long forgotten. The figure took a step forward. The walls of the chamber reacted, symbols flaring with new energy. The spear in Elias's hands pulsed in recognition. Then the figure spoke. His voice was a whisper of history, layered with countless echoes. You were not meant to take the spear, human. Elias swallowed. His instincts told him to raise the weapon, to prepare for another fight. But something deeper inside him knew. This was different. The figure studied him. Yet here you stand. The last champion is long gone. The seal has broken. The war begins again. Elias clenched his jaw. I stopped it. The figure shook his head. No, you delayed it. The cycle is not broken. Elias's fingers curled around the spear. Then tell me how to break it. The figure was silent for a long time. Then he spoke words that chilled Elias to his core. You cannot. The truth behind the spear. The chamber around them shifted. Symbols flickered. Images flashed across the walls. Visions of ancient battles, of warriors wielding weapons like Elias's spear, fighting monsters not of this universe. Elias saw entire civilizations burned away, planets turned to dust, empires falling into the abyss. And through it all, the spears. They were not just weapons. They were prison keys. Each one tied to a seal. Each one holding something back. Elias's grip tightened. How many? The figure's glowing eyes met his. 7. Elias's breath caught. 7 spears. 7 seals. 7 entities. And he had just broken the first one. A heavy silence filled the chamber. The truth settled onto his shoulders like a weight he could never lift. This wasn't a victory. It was a warning. The first battle had ended, but the war had only just begun. The hunt begins. The golden specter slowly faded, his final words ringing in Elias's mind. They will come for you now. The others. Those who seek the spears. Those who fear them. You have set something into motion that cannot be undone. And then, he was alone. Elias stood in the silent ruins, his body aching, his mind racing. The moment he stepped out of this place, everything would change. He would no longer be just another explorer, another soldier. He was a walking myth now, a legend. And every force in the galaxy, good or evil, would be coming for him, to take the spear, to use it, or to kill him before he found the others. Elias exhaled slowly. He turned toward the exit, toward the broken ruins above, toward the stars waiting beyond. He had a choice. He could run, hide, try to escape the fate that had been forced upon him. Or he could find the others before anyone else did. He could finish what had been started long before him. He could end the war before it even began. The spear pulsed in his grip, as if approving his choice. Elias smirked, rolling his shoulders as he stepped forward. The hunt was on, and he had no intention of losing. The legend of the human who freed the spear had only begun.